Welcome to Shannons Club TV, the show for all motoring enthusiasts to relive the histories of cars on Australian roads and racetracks.
In each episode, we profile our feature car with rare archival images, new insights, and we look at an owner's example.
We'll also get the latest market news from the Shannons auctions team. So let's kick things off with the stylish car that brought a unique Scandinavian flavour to the Australian car market, the Volvo 120 series.
Few automotive companies have undergone as many changes of brand image as Volvo. If you think of Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar or BMW, to name just four, public perception of what their cars are like and have been like remain fairly steady. By contrast, Volvo, which comes from the Latin for I roll, has hardly rolled along the same road. The first sales of the Volvo 122S sedan in Australia were in 1962, initially with a 1.6 engine. Unkind Volvo jokes were some 20 years into the future. Along the way, the Volvo brand image changed dramatically. Back in 1962, the Holden EJ was new. The Volkswagen Beetle was a big seller, so was the Morris 850. It was the world of the R and S series Valiants, the Austin Freeway and the Hillman Super Minx. The beautifully built and finished Swedish Volvo stood out in this company as rare and special, like Scandinavian furniture. Mark, I was fascinated to learn that Harry Firth drove one in a scratch race for sedans at the second ever Sandown meeting. I mean, why would he have chosen a Volvo?
Well, I think that shows the esteem this car was held in at the time.
Already?
And the interest that it was generating amongst the racing set. That was about the time, it was 62, when Harry was just starting to do work with Ford, so
yes,
that wouldn't have gone anywhere. But I think it shows it was quite a good performance car. I mean, it won rallies in Europe. It won a big 4-hour race up in Queensland with David Mackay. Class winner at the 6-hour at Sandown. I mean, this car did have some very good pedigree and some good credentials in terms of its results. The biggest problem for it at Bathurst, though, was it was so typical of what we saw in European cars of the era. You know, quite a robust, large body with a relatively small engine going up that hill.
Up that hill.
That hill just killed so many.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Motoring journalist and racer David Mackay was rapt. He drove Sydney dealer British and Continental Motors demonstrator to Adelaide, and his road test in the Sunday Telegraph had the heading, "Most Outstanding Car Tested." Mackay said, "I can't believe this car and what it does." That car had a 1.6 litre engine. Max Stahl, editor of Racing Car News and a successful Humpy Holden racer himself, bought an 18-month-old red 1966 122S sedan. It was his daily driver for more than 46 years. Stahl himself came to the mark via Simca, whose Aronde, some car this Simca, had quite a sporting pedigree. The Volvo's twin carburettor 1.8 litre engine was a detuned version of the sporty P1800s, the Saints car. With 90 horsepower and generous torque, it took the Volvo to a top speed of 93 miles an hour. There was a floor gear change in an era of column shifts and a heater designed for the Arctic. But despite its merits, Mark, I'm still having trouble visualising the Volvo as a race car.
Well, that's totally understandable, but it could have been very, very different if they'd put a V8 under the bonnet. The four-cylinder Volvo 122S built a loyal following, but an abundance of power was never one of its attributes. However, had a prototype become a production reality in the 1960s, Volvo could well have had a genuine V8 Bathurst contender straight off the showroom floor. Back in the 1950s, Volvo was experimenting with concepts that could appeal to the lucrative US market, which prompted creation of an ideas car called the Phillip, powered by a compact 220 cubic inch or 3.6 litre cast iron V8 of Volvo's own design and manufacture. It was rugged and simple. It weighed less than Chevrolet's defining small block V8 of the era, and it would have responded well to performance upgrades. The V8 prototype had speed to burn in a straight line. The only problem was it wanted to keep going in a straight line at the first corner. The extra weight of the V8 destroyed the car's handling, and the exciting concept was dropped. John, even though the 122S only had a little inline four of less than 2 litres capacity, people raved about this car's performance on Australian roads. What was its secret, do you think?
Well, I always think of the 122S as like a slightly upmarket Peugeot 404, and I think it was revered for very much the same qualities. Point to point, we used to talk about.
Yeah.
Not great acceleration initially, but the ability to cruise at close to the maximum speed, quietly, effortlessly, with lovely handling and great road balance and a very good ride. The Volvo did have a bit more performance than the Peugeot, which meant it was obviously just that little bit more exciting. But the other thing was it was unusually available with either a column shift or a floor shift, and I'm sure enthusiasts preferred the latter. So it was a bit like the Peugeot 404, but a bit more and Swedish, hence very different, very appealing.
An interesting comparison you make with the Peugeot 404, because those cars really appealed to regional buyers with the rough roads.
Exactly right. They were both cars that could handle the rough.
Good ride quality.
Yes, absolutely.
The performance disparities created by the Bathurst 500's early class structure, which was based purely on retail prices, was evident in 1965, when a pair of 122S sedans found themselves in the same class as the new Cortina GT500. The Swedish cars had no chance against Ford's outright winning Bathurst Special, but 2 122S entries appeared the following year, with one of those cars shared by future Bathurst winners Kevin Bartlett and John Harvey. Unfortunately, their drive was hindered by a down-on-power engine, and the other car crashed out. Sadly, the Bathurst fortunes of the 122S did not improve in its final appearance due to engine damage caused by oil surge. The 122S did not have the crucial power-to-weight ratio required to be a major threat on the mountain. But you can't help wondering how different things could have been had Volvo persisted with its V8 experiments in the late 1950s. You can read many other great road and race stories on the Shannons Club website.
I'm Philip Perkins, the owner of this 122S, otherwise known as a Volvo Amazon. My interest started with Volvo when I was only 18 and 19. I've been insured with Shannons for roughly 35 years. The car is a 1.8 litre motor. It has standard twin SU, HS6 SUs. Other countries saw single carby versions with drum brakes. The 3-point safety belts were fitted to these cars as standard. It had made a huge impact on saving many, many lives. The car is equipped with sensational brakes for its time. It had Girling calipers, 3-pot calipers on the front, the same calipers used on Aston Martin's DB5s. So the stopping capacity of these cars is quite phenomenal, particularly when people were rallying them and racing them. They found that they could certainly outbrake a lot of cars of the era. It was a good opportunity to get something and really have a go at restoring it and doing a nice job of it. The car was completely stripped down. All the interior was refurbished. The engine has been built to a rally sport spec. The camshaft was used and designed by Phil Irving. It was one of the Phil Irving design with R-Sport extractors on it. I hadn't made it known to anyone that I'd restored this car, and it was just on the completion of the car that it was announced that the club was going to have a national rally at Echuca, and I showed up and I think all of their jaws dropped. They were just astonished at the build quality and the work I'd put into it.
Well, Chris Barbon from Shannons Auctions joins us to discuss the Volvo 120 series. Welcome to the show, mate.
Hi, Mark. Hi.
Hi Chris, do you agree that Volvo got off to a great start in Australia with the 120 series?
We did see some great interest in the 120 series and the P1800 later on. And then there was a bit of we went through a lull, I guess.
Decades of a lull.
The safety obsession.
I think so, and I think that's where Volvo were driven by the safety at the time.
But the safety obsession hasn't hurt the collector appeal of the early cars, has it?
No, it hasn't. And again, let's see today where Volvo is. They brought the performance aspect back into their cars, and there's a great demand for them again.
I guess you don't see that many across the Shannons auctions, but there's a tremendously strong club movement amongst these cars, isn't there?
There seems to be a fairly good club movement around Australia for the Volvos, and good support again for the 120 series and some of the later cars as well.
So what's the most desirable? I mean, cars like the 123 GT, I mean, we only got like 50 in Australia, I think. That's a very, very rare car.
It is, and it's probably something that we really don't see very often. If something does come up, it will change hands amongst the club.
That's what we would call now a halo car, the 123 GT, and it was a two-door car. I wonder whether that means generally that the two-door 120 series are more collectible than the four doors, the 122S sedan being the most common. Do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, look, I would agree with that. I think the two-door variant is definitely one to look for, and that's whether in the 122 or 123 series. We also got the variants of the wagons, which really we don't see at all these days.
Very rare.
But as you mentioned, I think the GT is probably the hero car out of those.
So I guess you have to say it's a practical classic. Being a four-door sedan, the 122S, it's still got good performance, relatively good performance. Good parts backup, support through the club. So when we talk about practical classics, this car would be right up there, wouldn't it?
It's got to be up there. It's a car that you can potentially, fit your family or friends in. It's affordable. Probably a really good entry-level point into the classic car world.
Well, thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thank you.
And remember, you can get all the latest auctions news on the Shannons Club website. If you'd like your own competition image of the Volvo 120 series, visit AutoPic's incredible motorsport photo archive. John, it's interesting looking back at the 120 series Volvo, considering they were very interested in pushing into the US market. There seems to be a very strong US influence in the styling of that car.
I think they took a good look at the Chrysler 300 series, the letter cars,
Very similar,
and gave it a European feel. So in a sense it was a very cosmopolitan car in a way, if you think about it, for the time, the best of all worlds, utterly European, and yet with some pretty fresh American type styling.
And the thing that really intrigues me about that early 120 series Volvo, it seems to be quarantined from that negative perception of the brand from the 70s and 80s.
That's an excellent word, quarantined. It's like some of the later subsequent history had never happened. And that's because the 120 series was always perceived as a quality car, very appealing to enthusiasts.
Very much so. Well, we hope you've enjoyed joining us for this reflection on the fabulous Volvo 120 series. We'll look forward to your company next time on Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.
See you later.